Have you ever wondered what's the best age to start your enterprise? Or what is the best age to buy the business that you're interested in? What's the best age to get started in acquisitions or deal making or even do your startup? Well, if you've asked yourself that question or anyone else that question, I need you to understand that you're not alone. Because that is one of the most asked questions in business today. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to help you take a look at some of the best possible answers to what you've been wondering about. And I think on the other side of this, you'll come away with some information that will leave you supercharged, well-informed, really excited about getting out there into the marketplace and doing your thing and doing some deals, making some business happen, and actually doing a startup if that's your goal. So let's talk about this. What is the best age to get started in business? Well, here's what we know. We know that the last time these numbers were looked at, the most common age for first-time business startups or acquisitions, as they merged the two bits of data together, 20 years ago, it was 53 years old. So if you were thinking, maybe I'm too old to get started, there's probably something to that. But all along the way, inside of that data, there's information about people of all ages, from childhood all the way deep into the senior ages, deep into the 70s, 80s, and even 90s in some cases, who started their businesses. Now, I think of myself, of course, I started cutting grass when I was 8 years old to make extra money. And I'm sure you've got stories like that too, maybe your paper route or selling little trinkets or lemonade stands at school. And there's stories all the way up into senior citizens. So let's start with one senior citizen in particular. You know, everyone's heard of Colonel Sanders. I think they call it KFC now is the name of the stores. And people, you'll notice there's a picture of a guy, an elderly gentleman, a stately looking fella with a white beard and a white coat, and he's on the signs. Well, the reason the picture of the elder gentleman is on the signs is because he did not actually get started with Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders chicken, until he was 65 years old. That is following a lifetime of extreme hardship, extreme failures, and really some tough times trying to just survive out there across the United States. And he started this business, he came up with this recipe, and he decided that after it went so well at his restaurant and people always asked him for the recipe, he would go out to restaurants and he would sell them the rights to use his recipe. And what did he want in return? It was very simple. It wasn't some big franchise agreement. There wasn't some big, 15-year tie-up. He simply said this: every time you sell a chicken using my recipe, you need to send me a nickel. And the story goes that long after the company went super worldwide and had blown up, and even after he'd sold the company, that he would need help going out to his mailbox, hauling in the bags and bags of nickels from his mailbox every day from all of the successful restaurateurs that he helped get started by using the recipe that he didn't actually put into commercial action until he was 65 years old. Well, you're like, well, that's great, Mark. Thanks for telling me about a 65-year-old. But I'm 25, so what can I do with that story? Well, maybe you can't do as much with that story as you like, but I can tell you a story about a young high school junior by the name of Fred DeLuca, who borrowed $2,000 from his next door neighbor to start a sandwich shop. And his next door neighbor, who was a full-grown adult, believed in Fred DeLuca's vision, excitement, and enthusiasm enough to put some backing behind Fred DeLuca and help him get started with his business. Fred DeLuca started a sandwich shop, and he started with just a handful of different things. Sold these sub-sandwiches like there was no tomorrow. And before you knew it, that single restaurant grew to be so profitable that every time Fred had to make a decision that was typical for someone between the ages of 17 and 21, he really had to give it a lot of thought, because he had this booming business that was growing like wildfire, and he knew that every decision would be super important, especially since that business would go on to become the more than 25,000 unit Subway sandwich franchise that we know today. The international conglomerate was started by a 17-year-old who used other people's money to get the thing going. And that is what I mean when I share with you that the age that you should be doing it at is the age that you're at right now. The age that you should be starting your business at is the age that you are at right now. The funny thing is across the history books and the pages of history, there are stories of people who got started in their businesses at all ages. Bill Gates started writing code with Steve Ballmer when he was a mere 12 years old, and Steve Ballmer, I think, was 17. And these guys lived for that, and they poured themselves into their passions. And so one of the takeaways from that is if you are young, you'll probably have to spend all of your passion and all of your energy to get the thing going. If you are older, you'll probably have to spend a significant portion of your assets, your resources, and your money, or someone else's, to get the thing going. Very often people will ask me, Mark, well, I'd like to get an SBA loan like you talk about to do my deal, to buy that business, but I don't want to put a personal guarantee on my house. Well, I got news for you. You put a personal guarantee on your house when you buy your house. So really what you're saying is that you're not quite to a place where you want to bet on yourself at that level. And I would encourage you, if you've got a vision that you're excited about, that you do whatever you have to do to make that vision a reality. Let me tell you about a guy who faced such a dilemma. There was a 56-year-old milkshake mixer salesman. And back in the days when drive-through restaurants like Sonic and were all the rave and hamburger joints were popping up everywhere, somebody got the idea to start selling milkshakes along with these sandwiches. And the idea took off like crazy. I mean, who doesn't like ice cream that you can drink through a straw, right? So I understand this. Well, this milkshake mixer salesman was doing quite well, and he was making a great living even by today's standards. And he noticed that there was a restaurant out on the West Coast that was calling and ordering 2 milkshake mixers, brand new ones, every 6 months. And he said, I wonder why they're ordering these. Maybe they have more than just one restaurant. So he called, and nope, they only had one restaurant. So he said, I've got to go out and see what it is that's got these guys ordering 2 brand new milkshake mixers every 6 months. How could they possibly be wearing out 2 milkshake mixers every 6 months in one store? So he got in his car and he drove across the country all the way out to California, where he met a couple of brothers by the name of the McDonald's brothers. And they had this fancy drive-through restaurant. It was state-of-the-art for the time. They believed in it so much that they closed down. They used to own the big movie theater in town. They'd closed that down. They started this thing, and they were going great guns. And he just watched in amazement. And he loved it. And he said to himself, I'd love to be in this business. And then he said to the McDonald's brothers, I'd love to be in your business. And then he thought to himself, but I don't really have any resources. I don't have any money. I don't have any assets, but I really like this business. And so he put on his thinking cap, and after much negotiation and much deliberation and lots of concessions, not just one, he didn't just shoot the big offer across the bow, and if they said no, he didn't take his ball and go home. He went back to the drawing board, he just stayed with it and continued negotiating with these guys. When you're thinking, well, what could he be negotiating for? You said he had nothing, he had no resources. He didn't have a big bankroll, he had no assets. What could he be offering to buy their restaurant? What he offered was what he had. He said, you guys are good at the restaurant business, and I'm a good salesman. But I think this new franchising thing could really be big. So why don't we make a deal? You keep your restaurant. It's great. I think it's wonderful. And what I would like is I would like the rights to sell the franchise. And when I sell the franchises, I will be making enough money to buy more of your restaurant from you. And with that, he started off across the country selling this great idea that sells more hamburgers at one time on a 15-cent menu than anybody had ever seen. They're selling milkshakes like there's no tomorrow, and people were signing up and buying these franchises left, right, and center. And he started with absolutely no money. He used the resources of the McDonald's brothers with their existing store, and he used his brain and his creativity and his mouth to share the word and to enroll others with his enthusiasm. He was 56 years old when he started. 10 years later, he was one of the richest men in the world when his company continued to grow, and he went public and he bought the McDonald's brothers out, and the story continues to write itself as there's more than 30,000 McDonald's restaurants worldwide. Why do I share these stories with you? Is it to be motivating to you? No. Motivation is internal. That's going to come from you. But hopefully it's inspirational to you, and hopefully it serves as a reminder that from here, you can go anywhere. And the time, if you look at your watch, is now o'clock. get started, put your creativity into action, put your resources into action, use your network, tell people about your idea, and enroll the kind of people that can help you do what it is you're trying to do. And I will see you at the closing table.